Hello again, and welcome back to Critiquing Christianity. I am Jonathan. The date is Friday, July 14, 2023. I am a former Protestant and Eastern Orthodox Christian who now gleans very heavily from the philosophical tradition of Neoplatonism, as well as the traditions of Hinduism and perennialism. What I try to do here on my channel is provide a depth of analysis of Christianity that is very difficult to find elsewhere. You can find a lot of sources that challenge Christianity on an intellectual and philosophical basis, that challenges Christianity on a textual basis, but I'm trying to really push this to the nth degree and get down and dirty as far as one can go into the depths of philosophy, of the Christian philosophies and the Christian metaphysical framework, particularly as it relates to things like the Trinity and the doctrine of the Incarnation, and what certain assumptions one must have about and things like like anthropology or personhood in order to even be a Trinitarian or believe in the doctrine of the Incarnation. And then I challenge those fundamental assumptions on the deepest possible level to see if they hold up. So today's video, I am not a big fan at all of sensationalist video titles. And I understand why people use them, to grow their channel or gain a following or, attract a crowd. I understand the business aspect of all this and why people do that. That's not my goal. My goal is to literally destroy anything, no matter where it comes from, that is false. So I'm trying to get to the very heart of the truth on all possible levels, and to understand reality as a whole to the furthest extent possible. So my goal isn't here to, quote, destroy Christianity or to destroy other people or anything like that. I'm not on a vendetta. I'm not trying to start fights. I'm not, I think that we should go wherever the truth takes us. And I think we should be open enough and fearless enough to investigate as deeply as we need to, even if it means shaking our own worlds and undermining our own, worldview foundations, even if they make us incredibly uncomfortable. We have to go all out, because what else is there? What is there to do in this lifetime but discern the truth and weed out what is false? Unless, of course, your goal in life is simply to eat, drink, and be merry and, watch sports or whatever. So, the reason I brought up this thing about not being a big fan of sensationalist titles is, as you can see, I have a title for this video that you might think, at first blush, is incredibly sensationalist. But I would not have a title like this if I did not believe it were absolutely true. Now bear with me, because this is a very important argument that I am constructing here. It's short, it's brief. I have reduced it to a formula that is short to make it easier for people to understand. But it still deals with difficult concepts, so I'm going to maybe sound like I'm, talking down to you, being condescending, or patronizing or something, talking down to the audience like you're 5-year-olds. I'm just doing this because I want to be absolutely as clear and convincing as possible. So, quite simply, the Christian tradition, and I'm speaking in broad terms here because I know that there are different Christian traditions that use different vocabularies, okay? But I'm speaking generically here, and when I use a more specific term, I'll explain, that it's peculiar to a certain particular to a specific tradition. The Christian tradition says that the human person, or human hypostasis, that's the Greek term for person, is tripartite. That means the human person is made up of 3 things. He's made up of a body, a soul, and then the nous, or spirit. The spirit, or nous, or mind, or intellect, is a faculty or energy of the soul. But it is singled out due to the fact, and this is found more explicitly in the Eastern Christian tradition, it is singled out due to the fact that when we refer to the nous, we're not talking about something that allows us to engage in normal, everyday, rational thinking. The nous gives us the ability to intuit ultimate reality. And it allows us to contact the divine, to touch the divine, to enter into worship of God, and to ultimately unite ourselves with God. So those 3 things, body, soul, and nous, or spirit, constitute the human person, the individual. The person is that which distinguishes him or her from all other persons. So the person is unrepeatable and unique. But what every human person has are those 3 things: a body, a soul, and a nous. But it's the way the person exercises their nous that separates him or her from all other persons. But have you ever noticed a strange thing? Think about Jesus. The Christian tradition says about Jesus that he also had all 3 of those things: a body, a soul, and of course, a nous. Because if he didn't have a nous, he wouldn't have a soul, since the nous is integral to the soul. So he has a human body, he has a human soul, human soul, and therefore as a result he has a nous as well. Yet somehow, strangely enough, the church does not teach that Jesus is a human created person in his own right, even though he possesses everything that by definition constitutes a human created person. Now, that being the case, the church has put itself in a very interesting position. So let's explain what I mean by going back for a moment to the doctrine of the incarnation. The doctrine of the incarnation states, very simply, that the eternal second person of the Holy Trinity, the divine Logos, an uncreated person, took on human nature, i.e., the body, the soul, and the nous, and united thereby the human nature with the divine nature. This leaves the Christian understanding of personhood, in the very difficult spot of having to choose between one of two options. Either we would have to say that body, soul, and spirit, we would have to deny that those three things constitute a human person, and that the human being is actually impersonal. So those three things would not constitute the person. They would just constitute an impersonal nature. Or the Logos literally possessed a human person named Jesus, literally hijacked the human nature of the human person, Jesus, took it over, and that is what we are calling the incarnation of the God-man. That is what we are calling the God-man. If Jesus was a human person, if Jesus was not a human person, if his nature were simply conjoined with the divine nature, and his personhood is defined purely in terms of the uncreated Logos, or second person of the Holy Trinity, then what constitutes the human person? There's nothing left to constitute the human person. I hope by now you see the problem. If you need more clarification, just add something in the comments, or submit questions, whatever. I'm happy to pick up on it again. But I think I'm being pretty clear here. What constitutes personhood? And again, if those three things don't constitute personhood, then there's no such thing as a created person. Now, I don't mind saying that there's no such thing as a created person, but that's not a problem for me, since I'm coming at this from a dharmic perspective rather than from a revealed religion perspective, rather than from an Abrahamic perspective. My perspective is non-dual. It's not dualistic. I don't have a radical separation between God and nature, or between God and the world. For me, the cosmos is an extension of God or an expansion of God. It's an extension of divine consciousness, of the one person, of the supreme divine person. So I see human persons neither as impersonal nor as properly persons, but rather personal iterations of the supreme person who is God. There are many dharmis out there who actually do hold to an impersonalist understanding of what it is to be human. They say that humans, because they are not personal, they say that human beings are not personal because they're not persons. That doesn't follow at all. The Christians, who I'm going to call here hyper-personalists, in that they see all iterations, all of these individual iterations within the created order, human iterations, as separate persons or separate egos who literally constitute separate identities. They have the same problem in that they equate, in this anthropological context here, in a human context, they equate personalism with being a person. Personalism and personhood are not the same thing. That's all I'm trying to say. You can be personal without being a person if you are an iteration of God, who is the one and only supreme person, the one and only divine person. But that would mean, of course, the Trinity is not true. And I've gone through this in excruciating detail in past videos on the Trinity. So being personal does not mean being a person. And if I say you're not a person, that doesn't mean I don't think you're not personal. This is a distinction that very few people anywhere, regardless of the tradition they come from, really understand. I hope that my message got through crystal clear. Again, feel free to raise an issue, an objection, make a comment, or ask a question for further clarification if need be. The weekend is coming up, so I hope you enjoy your time this weekend. Have a great time, guys. Bye.